A frigid night brought the darkest secret of the mansion on the hill to light. The stepmother was plotting to make her stepdaughters disappear in exchange for money and absolute power. But a young housekeeper, invisible until then, heard and saw more than she ever should have. If this beautiful story of survival and love has you hooked, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from as we continue. The silence of the early morning was broken by urgent whispers coming from the main study of the Thompson mansion. Megan Hayes, 23, who had been the family's nanny for 3 years in the imposing Greenwich, Connecticut home, woke with a start in her small room in the staff quarters. Her sharp instincts, honed over years of caring for the 4-year-old twins, Isabella and Sophia, told her something was deeply wrong. Megan had 3 qualities that set her apart from anyone else in that house. A quiet courage that made her face difficult situations without hesitation, an observational skill that allowed her to notice details others missed, and an unwavering loyalty to the 2 little girls she cared for as if they were her own. These qualities, forged during a tough childhood in the South Bronx, where she learned early on to protect her younger siblings, were about to be tested in an unthinkable way. Edward Thompson, 52, was one of the most respected real estate developers in the country. A widower since the twins were just 2, he had remarried 2 years ago to Valerie Sanders, a 38-year-old woman who had won his trust with her apparent devotion to the girls and her sophisticated charm. Edward could never have imagined that behind his second wife's calculated smile hid ambitions that would endanger everything he loved most in the world. Valerie had spent the last few months nurturing a meticulous plan. Her frustration with the limitations of being merely a rich man's wife, without direct access to the family fortune, consumed her daily. The twins represented not only an obstacle in her quest for power, but also the key to her financial freedom. She had discovered, through shady contacts she'd maintained since before her marriage, a scheme that paid astronomical sums for children from wealthy families. On that Thursday morning, March 15th, Valerie would finally put her plan into action. Edward was on a business trip in Washington, D.C., not due back until the following evening. It was the perfect opportunity. At 2 in the morning, she welcomed Robert Mitchell into the house, a 45-year-old man who presented himself as a family relocation consultant, but who actually coordinated a clandestine network that catered to the specific demands of foreign families willing to pay fortunes for American children. Megan crept silently down the marble staircase, her bare feet making no sound. On the cold floor, she had learned to move through the mansion undetected, a skill she'd developed to check on the girls during the night without waking anyone. What she heard as she neared the study made her blood run cold. "The 2 girls are asleep in their room on the 2nd floor," Valerie murmured with a coldness Megan had never witnessed. "Isabella is more docile. She'll be less trouble. Sophia has a stronger personality, but nothing a few days away from home won't fix." Robert flipped through documents in a leather binder, responding in a low voice. "The interested family specified twins between 4 and 6. They fit the profile perfectly. The agreed-upon amount will be transferred to your offshore account in the Cayman Islands as soon as we confirm the children have reached their final destination." Megan felt her legs tremble. Her mind refused to fully process what she was hearing, but her protective heart raced when she realized they were talking about taking Isabella and Sophia away from home. She leaned against the wall, trying to control her breathing as she continued to listen. "My husband won't suspect a thing," Valerie continued. "I'll say I took them to spend a few days at my sister's house in the Berkshires. By the time he finds out they're gone, it'll be too late to track them. I've managed to get their birth certificates and all the necessary documents." "Perfect," Robert replied. "Our contact will be here at 4 a.m. to pick them up. Are you sure you can do this without them waking up or making a scene?" Valerie let out a low, cruel laugh that made Megan feel sick. "I already put a mild sedative in their milk before bed. They're sleeping soundly. They won't feel a thing." During the transition, Megan had to hold onto the wall to keep from fainting. The words echoed in her mind like a nightmare. Isabella and Sophia, the 2 sweet girls who ran into her arms every morning, who called her Auntie Meg with their angelic smiles, were being sold by their own stepmother as if they were objects. Her maternal instinct, sharpened by years of caring for the twins, overrode her fear. Megan knew she had less than 2 hours to act before the person arrived to take the girls away forever. Her mind worked quickly, assessing her limited options. She couldn't call the police without concrete evidence, and Valerie would surely deny everything. Edward was hundreds of miles away. She decided to act on her own. With her heart pounding, Megan silently climbed up to the twins' room. She found them sleeping deeply in their little beds decorated with Disney princesses. Isabella, with her blonde hair just like her father's, was hugging her favorite doll. Sophia, with her curly brown hair, was sleeping with her thumb in her mouth, a habit she had when she was especially peaceful. Looking at those innocent faces, Megan made the most important decision of her life. She would not let anything bad happen to her girls. She grabbed her own savings hidden in a tin in her room, gathered some important documents she knew Edward kept, and began to plan how she would get out of that house with the twins without Valerie noticing. When the clock struck 3:30, Megan heard footsteps approaching the girls' room. It was Valerie, coming up to get them. The moment of truth had arrived, and Megan knew the next few minutes would determine Isabella and Sophia's fate forever. With her heart racing and her hands shaking, she prepared for the confrontation that would change all of their lives. Megan positioned herself strategically behind the door of the twins' room, holding a small camcorder she had borrowed from Edward's office months ago to record the girls' first steps. Her intuition had led her here. If she could record Valerie trying to take the children, she would have the proof she needed. Valerie entered the room with calculated movements, carrying 2 small pink suitcases that Megan recognized as the twins' travel bags. What shocked her most was the natural way the stepmother moved, as if she were simply dressing the girls for a morning outing. No sign of hesitation or remorse marked her face as she approached Isabella's bed. "My little one," Valerie murmured in a strangely sweet voice, "it's time for a very special adventure." Megan started recording, her hands trembling as she tried to keep the camera steady. Isabella mumbled something inaudible, still under the effect of the sedative, but didn't fully wake up as Valerie began changing her pajamas into a travel dress. The critical moment came when Valerie moved to Sophia's bed. The girl, always more resistant than her twin sister, began to stir and slowly open her eyes. Megan knew Sophia was a lighter sleeper and often woke up during the night calling for her. "Auntie Meg?" Sophia mumbled, her voice groggy, her brown eyes struggling to focus on the figure in front of her. "Where's Auntie Meg?" Valerie hesitated for a second, a shadow of nervousness crossing her face for the first time that morning. "Auntie Meg she's resting, sweetie. It's just us now." "I don't want to go," Sophia said, her voice still weak, but with a determination that made Megan's heart ache. "I want my Auntie Meg, I want Daddy." "Your daddy is waiting for you where we're going," Valerie lied, trying to lift the girl from the bed. "It's going to be a beautiful surprise." It was at that moment that Megan made the decision that would change everything. She couldn't keep watching that scene without acting. She stepped out from behind the door and flipped on the light, making Valerie jump and drop Sophia back onto the bed. "What are you doing, Megan?" Valerie's voice was tense, but she quickly tried to regain her composure. "Why are you awake at this hour?" "The question is, what are you doing, Mrs. Thompson?" Megan replied, keeping the camcorder pointed at her. "Why are you trying to take the girls from their home at 4 in the morning?" Sophia, hearing the familiar voice, reached her little arms out toward Megan. "Auntie Meg, she said Daddy was waiting, but I don't want to go without you." Valerie realized the situation had spun out of her control. Her eyes fixed on the camcorder in Megan's hands, and a furious expression took over her face. "You have no idea who you're messing with," she said in a low, threatening voice. "Turn that off now." "I'm not turning it off," Megan answered, her voice gaining strength. "And you're not taking these girls anywhere." The confrontation was interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. Robert appeared at the bedroom door, visibly annoyed by the delay. Seeing Megan with the camcorder, his expression turned dark. "What the hell is going on here?" he asked Valerie in a tone that made Megan realize she was dealing with people far more dangerous than she had imagined. "We have a little problem," Valerie answered, pointing at Megan. "The nanny decided to stick her nose where it doesn't belong." Robert advanced toward Megan, but she was faster. She scooped Sophia into her arms and ran to the side of Isabella's bed, positioning herself to protect both girls. "I've already recorded everything," Megan yelled, her voice echoing through the room. "Your whole conversation in the study, everything." "You liar," Valerie hissed. "You weren't in the study." "Yes, I was. And I heard you planning to sell the girls to a foreign family. I heard about the account in the Cayman Islands, about the sedative, about everything." Robert's face twisted into a mask of rage. "Valerie, you guaranteed me there would be no complications." "How was I supposed to know this busybody was listening?" Valerie retorted, her composure finally shattering completely. Sophia started to cry, frightened by the loud voices, and Isabella woke up with a start at the noise. Seeing strangers in the room and sensing the tension in the air, she also began to cry, calling for her twin sister. "Auntie Meg, I'm scared," Isabella sobbed, reaching her arms out to Megan, who picked her up along with Sophia. Megan felt the weight of the two girls in her arms, and a strength she didn't know she possessed took over. "You are not going to touch them," she said with a determination that surprised even herself. Robert whispered something in Valerie's ear, and she shook her head nervously. Megan realized they were planning something and knew she had to get out of there immediately. "Listen here," Robert said, approaching slowly. "Let's handle this like adults. You give us the camera, we leave, and you get a sum of money that will change your life forever. $50,000 just to forget what you saw today." Megan looked into the eyes of the two girls trembling in her arms and saw the pure fear stamped on their little faces. In that moment, she knew that no amount of money in the world would make her abandon Isabella and Sophia. "No," Megan answered firmly. "There's no price for these children's safety." Robert's expression changed completely. "Then you've chosen the hard way." Before he could take another step, Megan ran to the bedroom window, which overlooked the mansion's backyard. Fortunately, the twins' room was on the ground floor, making a potential escape easier. With both girls still in her arms, she managed to open the window. "You're going to have to trust Auntie Meg now, okay?" she whispered to the twins. "We're going on an adventure, but you have to be very quiet." Isabella and Sophia, though scared, nodded. The trust they placed in Megan was absolute. Megan jumped through the window with the two girls, landing on the soft lawn of the garden. Behind her, she could hear Robert yelling at Valerie, blaming her for the situation getting out of control. Running across the property toward the back gate, Megan knew her life had changed forever in those few minutes. There was no going back. She had become the only protection. Isabella and Sophia had against a terrible fate. What she didn't know was that her courageous decision had set off a chain of events that would reveal even darker secrets about the Thompson family, and that her fight to protect the twins was just beginning. The fine early morning mist wet Megan's face as she ran through the deserted streets of Greenwich, carrying Isabella in her arms and holding tightly to Sophia's hand. Her bedroom slippers had been lost during the escape, and her bare feet slipped on the wet asphalt. The twins, still under the effects of the sedative, clung to her with the absolute trust that only small children can place in someone they love. "Auntie Meg, I'm cold," Isabella murmured against her shoulder, her small arms wrapped tightly around Megan's neck. "I know, sweetie, I know," Megan replied, trying to control the tremor in her voice. "We'll be warm soon, I promise." Megan had made a desperate decision when she fled through the window, but now, walking the empty streets at 5 in the morning, the reality of her situation began to sink in. She was a 23-year-old nanny, with no close family in the area, just $300 in her pocket, and 2 4-year-old children to protect. Worse, she knew Valerie wouldn't just stand by. She was certainly already concocting a version of events that would completely exonerate her. The first shelter Megan found was a 24-hour diner on the main road, where the owner, Joe, a kind 58-year-old man, let her and the girls warm up while they had some hot chocolate. Isabella and Sophia, gradually recovering from the sedative, started asking questions Megan didn't know how to answer. "Why did we leave home so early?" Sophia asked, her brown curls still messy from sleep. "And where's Mommy, Valerie?" Megan's heart ached. How could she explain to 2 4-year-olds that their own stepmother had tried to sell them? How could she make them understand they couldn't go home for now? "Mommy Valerie had to go on a trip," Megan lied, hating herself for having to deceive the girls. And we're going on a special adventure until Daddy gets back. Joe watched the scene with growing curiosity. There was something strange about the situation. A young woman, clearly from a humble background with two obviously wealthy children, all in their pajamas at 5 in the morning. When Megan took the twins to the restroom, he discreetly turned on the radio and heard something that made her blood run cold. "We interrupt this program for an important announcement," the announcer said. "An Amber Alert has been issued for 4-year-old twins Isabella and Sophia Thompson of Greenwich, Connecticut. Police are searching for Megan Hayes, 23, the family's nanny, who is suspected of abducting the children from their home overnight. Anyone with information is urged to call 911 immediately." Megan felt her legs go weak when she heard the broadcast. Valerie had been faster and smarter than she'd imagined. In less than 2 hours, she had managed to completely flip the situation, turning Megan from a savior into a kidnapper. The camcorder in her pocket was her only proof, but who would believe the word of a nanny against the wife of one of New York's most influential developers? Joe looked at Megan with an expression that mixed suspicion and concern. "Miss," he said calmly, "I think you need to tell me what's going on here." Megan took Isabella and Sophia by the hand, her heart pounding. "Thanks for the hot chocolate," she said quickly, "but we have to go." "Wait," Joe held out a hand. "If these kids are in danger, I can help, but I need to know the truth." For a moment, Megan considered telling the diner owner everything. He seemed genuinely concerned, and she desperately needed help. But then she remembered how the media had portrayed similar cases. Nannies who tried to blackmail wealthy employers were always seen as guilty, until proven otherwise. "The truth," Megan replied bitterly, "is that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect children are the very ones they need to be protected from." Before Joe could respond, Megan heard the sound of approaching sirens. Valerie had been even more efficient than she'd thought. She'd probably used neighborhood security cameras to track where Megan had fled. "Auntie Meg," Sophia said, tugging on her pants, "why is there a police noise?" Megan scooped up both girls again, ignoring the pain in her back. "We're going to play hide and seek," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "You have to be very, very quiet, okay?" She slipped out the back door of the diner, entering a maze of alleyways she knew from her teenage years when she worked making deliveries in a nearby town. Behind her, she could hear Joe arguing with someone, probably police officers, asking if he'd seen a woman with 2 children. Megan found temporary refuge in a small, abandoned playground, hiding with the twins inside a playhouse-shaped structure. Isabella and Sophia, finally realizing something serious was happening, snuggled against her in silence. "Auntie Meg," Isabella whispered, "are you crying?" Megan hadn't realized tears were streaming down her face. "I'm okay, sweetie. Just a little tired." "When is Daddy coming back?" Sophia asked. That question broke Megan's heart. Edward was returning from D.C. that afternoon, but when he arrived, he would find a completely distorted version of the facts. Valerie had surely already prepared a convincing story about how the trusted nanny had betrayed the family and kidnapped his precious daughters. Worse still, Megan began to realize the legal implications of her situation. Even if she could prove Valerie had planned to sell the children, she herself had committed a crime by taking them from their home without the legal guardian's permission. In the eyes of the law, she was, in fact, a kidnapper. The phone in her pocket, a simple model Edward had given her for emergencies, started to ring. It was a number she recognized immediately, Edward's private cell. Megan hesitated, knowing Valerie had probably convinced her husband to call in the hope that Megan would answer and reveal her location. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Megan." Edward's voice was filled with an emotion she had never heard before, a mix of desperation, anger, and confusion. "Where are my daughters?" "Mr. Thompson," Megan began, her voice trembling. "I can explain everything. Valerie." "Valerie told me what you did," Edward interrupted, his voice growing harsher. "How could you? I trusted you. I treated you like family." "You have to listen to me," Megan pleaded. "Your wife was selling Isabella and Sophia. I have proof. She drugged the girls. She had a man there to take them away. I was only trying to protect them." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Megan could hear muffled voices. Valerie was there, probably whispering instructions on how to handle the situation. "Megan," Edward finally said, his voice sounding weary, "I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, or who's manipulating you, but I need you to bring my daughters home now. If you do that, I promise we'll find a way to sort this all out. And if I say I can't do that, then you've made it very clear you're not the person I thought you were." The call ended. Megan looked at the phone in her hands and realized she had lost the one ally who could have helped Isabella and Sophia. Edward had chosen to believe Valerie, and now she was completely alone against a system that would never give her word credibility against that of a rich and powerful family. Isabella stirred in her arms, whispering something that made Megan's world completely fall apart. "Auntie Meg, I want to go home." The midday sun beat down relentlessly on the small tenement building in Bushwick, where Megan had found temporary refuge. Mrs. Davis, a 67-year-old woman who ran an informal daycare for the children of domestic workers, had taken Megan and the twins in without asking too many questions. Her two-room apartment temporarily housed 6 children whose mothers worked in wealthy homes and had nowhere else to leave them. "Honey," Mrs. Davis said, as she prepared a plate of mac and cheese for Isabella and Sophia, "these girls aren't yours, are they?" Megan was sitting in a corner of the small sofa, watching the twins play with the other children. For the first time in hours, Isabella and Sophia seemed relaxed, engrossed in playing with dolls with 2 girls their age, Jasmine and Julia, the daughters of housekeepers Mrs. Davis had known for years. "They're not," Megan admitted, her voice heavy with exhaustion, "but I love them as if they were." Mrs. Davis sat down beside her, her work-worn hands gently holding Megan's trembling ones. "Tell me what really happened, child. And don't give me any stories. I've raised 17 kids of my own, and I know when someone's lying." Megan looked into the woman's kind eyes and felt she had finally found someone who might believe her. Slowly, she told the whole story, from the moment she heard the voices in the study to the desperate escape through the window. She showed the camcorder to Mrs. Davis, explaining it was her only proof. "Good Lord," the woman murmured when Megan finished. "What a heartless woman, selling her own stepdaughters like they were things." "The problem is, now I'm the one wanted by the police," Megan said, "and Mr. Thompson believes her version of the story." Mrs. Davis grew thoughtful. For a moment, watching Isabella and Sophia play happily, oblivious to the danger they had faced. "This woman, this Valerie, does she have family? Someone who might know her true character?" Megan considered the question. She always talked about her sister who lived in the Berkshires, said they didn't get along, but I never understood why. "And what do you know about her past before she married your boss?" "Very little. She was always private about it. I know she worked at a PR firm, that she met Mr. Thompson at a business event." As they talked, Megan's phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered, putting it on speaker so Mrs. Davis could hear. "Megan Hayes?" The voice was female, mature, with a slight upstate New York accent. "Who's calling?" "My name is Celeste Sanders. I'm Valerie Sanders' sister. Or ex-sister, I should say. I cut ties with her 2 years ago." Megan and Mrs. Davis exchanged surprised glances. "How did you get my number?" "I have contacts in the press. When I saw the news about the supposed kidnapping, I knew immediately my sister was involved. I can help you, but you need to come to the Berkshires today." "How can I trust you?" Megan asked, remembering that Valerie had mentioned taking the girls to her sister's house as an alibi. "Because I have documents that prove Valerie has done this before." The silence that followed was deafening. Megan felt her blood run cold. "What do you mean, done this before?" "She was in another relationship before she met Edward, a man in the import-export business. He had a 7-year-old daughter. The girl disappeared mysteriously and was never seen again. Valerie claimed she was kidnapped by strangers, but I always knew there was more to the story." Megan looked at Isabella and Sophia, who were playing innocently, and felt a wave of nausea. Where is that child now?" "That's the problem. No one knows. The case was never solved. The man fell into a deep depression and ended up losing everything. Valerie walked away from the relationship much richer than when she entered it. Mrs. Davis whispered a quiet prayer, making the sign of the cross. Megan felt as if the world was spinning around her. "Why didn't you report her sooner?" "I tried, but who was going to believe me?" "She was always smarter, more manipulative. She convinced everyone I was jealous of her, that I wanted to destroy her happiness. When I found out she'd remarried a man with young daughters, I tried to warn Edward, but she cut me out of her life completely." Megan looked at the twins and made a decision that would change everything. "Where can we meet?" "I know a safe place in the Berkshires, a B&B owned by a friend of mine. You can stay there while we organize the evidence. But you have to come today because I suspect Valerie is already planning her next move." After writing down the address, Megan hung up and turned to Mrs. Davis. "I have to go. Child, it could be a trap." "It could be, but it's the only chance I have to prove the truth. And if that woman is right, Isabella and Sophia aren't the first children Valerie has tried to—" Megan couldn't finish the sentence. Mrs. Davis went to an old cabinet and took out an envelope with some cash. "Take this. It's not much, but it'll cover the bus tickets and some food for the girls." "Mrs. Davis, I can't accept—" "Yes, you can and you will. Those children need you now." Megan called Isabella and Sophia, who came running to her with smiles on their faces, still not fully understanding the gravity of the situation. "Auntie Meg, Jasmine said there's a cat here. Can I see it?" Isabella asked, her blue eyes shining with childish curiosity. "Later, sweetie. We have to go on another trip now." Sophia frowned. "Another trip? But we just got here." Megan knelt down to the girl's level, trying to find the right words. "Do you trust Auntie Meg?" Both of them nodded with absolute conviction. "Then, I need you to be very brave today, okay? We're going to visit a very nice lady who has important information about Mommy Valerie." Information about what? Sophia always asked more questions than her sister. Megan hesitated, looking at those innocent faces. How could she explain that their stepmother was far worse than she had ever imagined? "About grown-up things that you don't need to worry about right now." The trip to the Port Authority bus terminal was tense. Megan kept the twins between her and Mrs. Davis, who had insisted on accompanying them to the bus. The streets of New York seemed filled with watching eyes. Every distant siren made Megan's heart pound. At the terminal, while Megan was buying tickets to a town in the Berkshires, Isabella tugged on her shirt. "Auntie Meg, there's a man over there staring at us." Megan turned discreetly and saw a man in a dark suit talking on the phone while looking in their direction. Her blood ran cold when she realized he was showing something, probably photos, to other people in the terminal. Valerie had found out where they were going. "Mrs. Davis," Megan whispered urgently, "I need you to take the girls to the restroom right now, through the tunnel that connects to the other platform." "What happened?" "They found us." As Mrs. Davis discreetly led Isabella and Sophia away, Megan watched the man in the suit approach the counter where she had bought the tickets. Her plan to meet Celeste Sanders in the Berkshires had been discovered before it even began. Now she needed a new plan, and time was running out fast. Megan ran through the corridors of the bus terminal, her heart beating so hard it felt like everyone around her could hear it. She found Mrs. Davis, with Isabella and Sophia hidden behind a food court stand, the two girls clinging to the older woman, their faces marked by confusion and growing fear. "Auntie Meg," Sophia whispered when she saw her approach. "Mrs. Davis said we're playing hide-and-seek, but I'm scared." Megan knelt and hugged both twins, feeling the crushing weight of the responsibility she had taken on. "I know, sweetie. But remember how Auntie Meg has always protected you? I'm going to keep protecting you, I promise." "Valerie's men?" Mrs. Davis asked in a low voice. "At least 3 that I could see. They knew exactly where we were going." Megan ran a hand through her hair, trying to think. Celeste must have told someone, or— Her phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Celeste Sanders. "Don't come to the Berkshires. Valerie found out our plan. My house is being watched. We need a new meeting place. I know a safe spot in the Hudson Valley. Reply if you're okay." Megan showed the message to Mrs. Davis, who frowned. How did that woman find out so fast? I don't know. But we don't have a choice. We have to trust her, or we're on our own. As she typed a reply, Megan heard a male voice over the terminal's PA system. Attention passengers. The NYPD is requesting your cooperation in locating Megan Hayes and 2 young children. Any information should be reported to security immediately. Isabella tugged on Megan's shirt. Auntie Meg, they said your name on the microphone. Why? It's a misunderstanding, sweetie. Everything will be sorted out soon. Mrs. Davis made a quick decision. You can't leave through the main entrance. I know a service exit that leads to the employee parking lot. My niece works here on the cleaning crew. She can help us. Minutes later, Megan found herself following Lucy, a 19-year-old who cleaned the terminal's restrooms on the afternoon shift. Lucy guided them through service corridors Megan never knew existed, carrying Isabella while Sophia held tightly to her free hand. My aunt told me what's happening, Lucy said, as she opened a heavy door leading to the parking lot. My cousin went through something similar when she tried to report her boss for abuse. Nobody believed her. Thank you for helping us, Megan said, moved by the solidarity of this young woman she barely knew. Women like us have to help each other, Lucy replied simply. Good luck. In the parking lot, Megan called Celeste Sanders again. We're out of the terminal. Where is this place in the Hudson Valley? It's a small country inn called Peaceful Haven. It's about 40 miles from the city on a back road. The owner's name is Martha, and she's already expecting you. She's trustworthy. How are we going to get there? We can't take a bus or a cab. I'm sending my brother-in-law to pick you up. He drives a fruit delivery truck. He'll be there in an hour. Megan hung up and looked at Isabella and Sophia, who were sitting on the curb, clearly exhausted. It was almost 3 in the afternoon, and they hadn't eaten properly since the morning. I'm hungry, Isabella murmured, resting her head on her sister's shoulder. Me too, said Sophia, and I want to take a shower. I'm all dirty. Megan felt a wave of guilt so intense it almost made her question all her decisions. These children were used to a life of comfort and security, and now they were on the run like criminals because of her. Maybe she should have let Valerie take them. Maybe the children would be better off. No, she said to herself out loud, pushing those thoughts away. I will not let her sell you like your objects. Sell us? Sophia had heard. What are you talking about, Auntie Meg? Megan realized she had said too much. It's nothing, sweetie. Auntie Meg is just thinking out loud. But Sophia was more perceptive than Megan gave her credit for. Did Mommy Valerie want to sell us? The silence that followed was deafening. Megan looked into Sophia's big, frightened eyes and realized she couldn't hide the truth anymore. At least, not completely. Mommy Valerie, she's not a good person, Sophia. She wanted to do bad things to you two. What kind of bad things? Isabella had joined the conversation, her voice trembling. Megan knelt in front of the 2 girls. She wanted to take you very far away to a place where you would never see Daddy again. The 2 children started crying simultaneously, clinging to Megan as if she were their only anchor in a stormy sea. But why? Isabella sobbed. We didn't do anything wrong. No, my loves, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices, and it has nothing to do with you. Sophia stopped crying for a moment and looked directly into Megan's eyes. Auntie Meg, are you going to take us back to Daddy? That question broke Megan's heart into a million pieces. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you're safe and you get back to Daddy, I promise. Even if you go to jail? Sophia always asked questions that cut straight to the point. Megan swallowed hard. Even if I go to jail? An hour later, an old but well-maintained truck pulled into the parking lot. The driver, a dark-haired man of about 50, got out and introduced himself as Anthony, Celeste's brother-in-law. Are you the ones heading to Martha's Inn? He asked with a kind smile. That's us, Megan replied hesitantly. Celeste told me the situation. You can trust me. I've got 3 daughters of my own, and I know you're doing the right thing. During the hour-long drive to the Hudson Valley, Isabella and Sophia fell asleep on the truck's bench seat, covered by a blanket Anthony had brought. Megan used the quiet time to talk to him about Celeste and Valerie. "Celeste is a good woman," Anthony said, keeping his eyes on the road. "Always been different from her sister. When Valerie moved to the city, Celeste was relieved. Said her sister had a darkness inside her that was scary. She told me about a child who disappeared before. Oh yeah, Martinez's daughter. A tragedy. The girl's name was Leah. She was 7 when she vanished. Her father never recovered. And Celeste is sure Valerie was involved?" Anthony paused for a long time before answering. "She's more than sure. She has proof." Megan felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of proof?" "That's something she'll have to explain in person. But I can tell you this much. Valerie isn't who she says she is. Her real name isn't even Valerie Sanders." The truck continued along the winding road leading into the valley as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Megan watched the rural landscape through the window, trying to process this new revelation. If Valerie was using a fake name, how many other lies had she told? And more importantly, how many other children had suffered at her hands? When they finally arrived, at the peaceful Haven Inn, Megan saw a simple but welcoming property, surrounded by trees and with a large lit-up porch. A woman with graying hair was waiting for them at the entrance with a warm smile. "Welcome," Martha said, hugging Megan as if she'd known her for years. "Celeste told me everything. You're safe here." But as Megan thanked her for her hospitality and carried the sleeping twins inside the inn, she had no idea that Valerie had discovered her location and was already organizing her next move. A move that would put not only Isabella and Sophia in danger, but also everyone who had decided to help Megan in her desperate fight for the truth. The next morning dawned with a thick fog blanketing the mountains surrounding the inn. Megan woke up in a simple but comfortable bed, with Isabella and Sophia sleeping soundly beside her, finally relaxed after nearly 2 days of constant tension. The sound of birds and the smell of fresh coffee made her feel for the first time in days that they might have a moment of peace. Martha had prepared a hearty breakfast: homemade bread, strawberry jam, scrambled eggs, and warm milk. The twins ate with gusto, asking questions about the farm animals and begging to see the chickens clucking in the yard. For a few minutes, Megan managed to forget the gravity of the situation and simply watch Isabella and Sophia be normal kids. "Auntie Meg," Sophia said as she spread jam on her toast, "it's much better here than our big house. It's more cozy." "Cozy how?" Megan asked, curious about the girl's observation. "At home, everything is always so quiet and cold. Here, people smile for real." Isabella nodded in agreement. Mommy Valerie never smiled for real. She only smiled when Daddy was looking. These childish but deeply perceptive observations made Megan realize just how much the children had picked up on the toxic environment they lived in, even at such a young age. Around 10 in the morning, a car came up the dirt road leading to the inn. Megan felt her tension immediately return, but Martha reassured her. "It's Celeste. She's here." Celeste Sanders got out of the car, carrying a heavy suitcase and a folder of documents. She was a 42-year-old woman with features similar to Valerie's, but with a much more genuine expression and eyes that conveyed kindness instead of the calculated coldness Megan had always sensed in Edward's wife. "Megan," Celeste approached cautiously, "thank you for trusting me. I know you must be terrified." "I am," Megan admitted, "but I'm out of options. I have to prove the truth." Celeste knelt down to Isabella and Sophia's level, who were watching her with curiosity. "You're even more beautiful than in the pictures Edward showed me." "You know our daddy?" Isabella asked, surprised. "I do, and he's very worried about you." Megan felt a tightness in her chest. "Does he still think I kidnapped them?" "Yes, but I can change that." Celeste looked at the girls. "Martha, could the little ones maybe play in the garden while we talk about grown-up things?" After Isabella and Sophia went out to see the chickens, accompanied by Martha, Celeste opened her folder of documents on the porch table. "Megan, I need to tell you who Valerie really is. Her real name is Vera Silva. She was born in Buffalo, New York, and had a very difficult childhood. Our mother abandoned the family when she was 12, and our father was a violent alcoholic." Megan took the documents Celeste offered her. "A birth certificate, school records, all with the name Vera Silva. When she turned 18, she ran away to New York City and completely reinvented her identity. She created a fake past, forged diplomas, and built a sophisticated persona. She was always very smart and manipulative. And you kept in touch with her. I tried. I was the younger sister. I always protected her when we were kids. Even after she changed her name and her life, I still hoped that one day she would go back to being the sister I knew. Celeste paused, her eyes filling with tears. But that never happened. In fact, she only got worse. Celeste opened another envelope revealing photos and documents about a man named Richard Martinez. This is Richard. He owned an import-export company. He met Valerie, or Vera, in 2019. She won his trust, became an essential part of his life and his daughter's, Leah. Megan picked up a photo of a smiling, blonde, blue-eyed girl. She looks like Isabella. That's exactly what I was going to say. Richard fell head over heels for Valerie. She moved into his house after 6 months, taking on the role of Leah's stepmother. And what happened? Celeste took a deep breath before continuing. Valerie found out Richard was facing financial difficulties. His company was on the verge of bankruptcy. She started pressuring him to take out a massive life insurance policy on Leah, claiming it was to protect the girl's future. Megan felt her stomach turn. And he did it? He did. A $2 million policy. 2 weeks later, Leah disappeared. How? Valerie said she took her to spend the day at the mall. She claimed that masked men approached them in the parking lot, that they pushed Valerie down and took Leah. She showed up at the police station with a few scratches on her arm and a very convincing story. Megan was flipping through the police reports on the case. And the police believed her? Completely. Valerie was an elegant, well-dressed woman dating a respectable businessman. Why would they suspect her? Besides, she had a perfect alibi for the kidnapping. What alibi? The mall's security cameras did indeed show men approaching them in the parking lot. What the police didn't know is that Valerie had hired those men. Megan felt the world spin around her. You have proof of that? Celeste picked up another document. I do. One of the men was named Robert Mitchell. Sound familiar? Megan almost dropped the paper. It was the same man who had been at Edward's house the night she uncovered the plan to sell Isabella and Sophia. He was at the Thompson mansion that night. I figured. Robert works for an organization that facilitates illegal adoptions. American children are highly sought after by wealthy families in other countries, especially in Europe and Asia. And Leah? What happened to her? Celeste hesitated, her hands trembling slightly. I managed to trace part of her journey. She was taken to a family in Switzerland. She still lives there today, but with a completely new identity. She doesn't even remember her real name anymore. Megan felt tears stream down her face. And Valerie. She got a substantial portion of the insurance money when Richard was declared incapable of managing his own affairs due to his depression. She moved to New York, changed her identity again, became Valerie Sanders, and started attending high society events where she met Edward. Why did you never report all this? I tried, but who was going to believe me against her? I was just a teacher from upstate with a traumatized sister trying to ruin the life of her successful sibling. She managed to completely discredit me. Megan was processing all this information when she heard the sound of cars coming up the inn's road. Her blood ran cold when she recognized the sound of the engine. It was Edward's BMW. He found me, Megan whispered, panic taking over. Celeste ran to the window. There are 2 cars. Edward is in the first one. And the second. I can't see clearly, but, Megan, I think it's the police. From the yard, Megan could hear Isabella and Sophia playing happily, with no idea that their fates were about to be decided in the next few minutes. Edward got out of the car with an expression Megan had never seen before, a mixture of relief, anger, and something she couldn't identify. Behind him, 2 police officers exited the second vehicle. Megan, Edward yelled toward the inn. I know you're in there. Bring my daughters out now. Celeste looked at Megan. It's now or never. Either we convince him of the truth or what? Or you're going to be arrested and Isabella and Sophia go back to Valerie. Megan, looked through the window and saw Edward walking determinedly toward the inn, followed by the police. In a few seconds it would all be over. But then she saw something that completely changed her perspective. In the yard, Isabella had stopped playing and was looking at her father with a fearful expression, hiding behind Martha instead of running to him as she always did. Why was Isabella afraid of her own father? Edward stormed onto the inn's porch like a hurricane, his eyes quickly scanning the area until they found Megan. His face was marked by 2 days of desperation, his jaw unshaven and his eyes red from lack of sleep. "Megan," his voice came out hoarse, thick with emotion. "Where are my daughters?" "They're safe," Megan replied, positioning herself between Edward and the door to the backyard. "Mr. Thompson, you need to listen to me. Your wife? My wife has been desperately searching for 2 days for the girls you took." Edward lunged toward her, but was stopped by Celeste, who stepped between them. "Edward, stop! I'm Celeste Sanders, Valerie's sister." Edward stopped abruptly, studying the woman's face. Valerie told me she had a troubled sister who made up stories about her. And that's exactly how she would describe me, Celeste answered calmly, because I know the truth about who she really is. One of the officers, a middle-aged sergeant named Miller, approached. "Mr. Thompson, let's handle this civilly, ma'am," he addressed Megan. "You're being accused of kidnapping. You need to come with us." "Sergeant," Celeste intervened, "before you arrest Megan, I'd like you to see some important documents regarding this case." Megan watched Edward closely, trying to find any sign that he might be willing to hear the truth. It was then she noticed something odd. Edward kept glancing nervously toward the back door, as if he were waiting for someone. "Mr. Thompson," Megan said slowly, "where is Valerie right now?" She's at home, of course. She's too distraught to come." Celeste and Megan exchanged a look. Something in Edward's answer didn't ring true. "Either she's at home," Celeste said, "or she's executing another plan while you're here distracting us." Edward turned sharply to her. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that your wife's name isn't Valerie Sanders. It's Vera Silva, and she's done this before." Celeste began showing the documents to Edward and Sergeant Miller. As they flipped through the certificates, the photos of Leah, and the police reports on the Martinez case, Edward's expression shifted from irritation to confusion, and then to something close to horror. This has to be fake," Edward muttered. "Valerie told me about her past. She's from a traditional family in the Berkshires, lost her parents young." "It's all a lie," Celeste said gently. "She built a false identity, Edward. And she did it to get close to wealthy men with young children." Just then Martha came onto the porch, carrying Isabella in her arms. The girl hid her face in the woman's shoulder, refusing to look at her father. "Isabella!" Edward held out his arms to his daughter. "Come to Daddy, sweetie." But Isabella shook her head vigorously, clinging even tighter to Martha. "I don't want to," she said in a small voice. Edward looked genuinely confused and hurt. "Why is she afraid of me?" Megan knelt down to Isabella's level. "Isabella, can you tell Daddy what you told me last night?" The girl looked at Megan with trust, then at her father with hesitation. "Mommy Valerie said if I told anyone about the strange man who came to our house, bad things would happen to Daddy." Edward felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. "What strange man, Isabella?" "The man Mommy Valerie brought over when you were away. She said he was a doctor, but he didn't look like a doctor. He kept looking at me and Sophia in a weird way." "Robert Mitchell," Megan whispered. "And she said," Isabella continued, her voice getting even smaller, "that if I was a good girl and drank the special milk, I would get a really cool surprise, but the milk tasted bad." Edward sat down heavily in a chair, his face turning pale as his daughter's words registered in his mind. "The special milk?" Megan took the camcorder from her pocket. "Mr. Thompson, you need to see this." Edward watched in total silence as the video Megan had recorded on the night of the planned abduction played. He saw Valerie changing Isabella's clothes, heard the conversation about selling the girls, saw his wife treating his daughters like merchandise. When the video ended, Edward had tears in his eyes. Sergeant Miller had also watched, his professional expression giving way to outrage. "My God, Edward murmured. How did I not see it? Because she's very good at what she does, Celeste replied. She studied you, Edward. She learned exactly how to win your trust, how to make herself indispensable in your life. Sophia appeared at the door, running toward Megan. Auntie Meg, the chicken laid an egg and Martha said I can help make a cake. Seeing her father, Sophia hesitated, but didn't show the same fear as Isabella. Instead, she looked at him with curiosity. Daddy, why are you crying? Edward knelt and opened his arms. Sophia ran to him and Edward hugged her, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Daddy missed you, he whispered in her ear. I missed you too, Daddy. But Auntie Meg took care of us. Sophia pulled back to look into her father's eyes. Daddy, is Mommy Valerie a bad person? Edward looked at Megan for a long moment, finally understanding the enormity of what she had done. She had risked everything to protect his daughters from a danger he had been too blind to see. Did Auntie Meg tell you that? No, Sophia shook her head. But I always knew. She never really liked us. She only pretended when you were around. Edward's phone rang. It was Valerie. Answer it, Celeste said, but put it on speaker. Edward hesitated, then answered. Valerie. Edward, darling, any news? Did you find the girls? Her voice sounded sweet and worried, exactly as a distraught mother should. We found them, Edward replied, watching everyone's reactions around him. Thank God. Are they okay? Did that woman do anything to them? Valerie, Edward said slowly. Where are you right now? At home, of course. Why? That's strange because I just got a call from our neighbor. He said he saw you leaving the house an hour ago with suitcases. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Valerie spoke again, her voice had lost all its previous sweetness. Edward, I don't know what you're talking about. Valerie, Edward continued, or should I call you Vera? The silence that followed was deafening. Then a low, cold laugh echoed through the phone. Ah, so you found out. Valerie's voice was now completely different, hard, calculating, without any trace of the loving woman Edward thought he knew. Took you longer than I expected. Where are you? Edward asked, his voice trembling with rage. Far enough away that you'll never find me, but don't worry, Edward, you'll soon have other things to worry about. What does that mean? It means I'm not going anywhere without getting what I'm owed for 2 years of taking care of those annoying brats, and if you think you can expose me without consequences, you are sorely mistaken. The call ended. Edward looked at the phone in his hands, then at Megan. Megan, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't believe you, that I didn't protect my daughters, The important thing now is that they're safe, Megan interrupted. Sergeant Miller hung up his own phone. Mr. Thompson, we just received information that your wife withdrew a substantial amount from your joint account and purchased a plane ticket to Mexico. The flight leaves in 3 hours. So she's going to get away, Celeste said. No, the sergeant replied. If she gets away now, she could come back any time to try again. And next time, you might not be so lucky. Edward looked at his daughters, who were now playing peacefully with Martha, oblivious to the danger they had faced. Then he looked at Megan, the brave young woman who had saved Isabella and Sophia's lives by risking her own freedom. What do we do now? It was Megan who answered, her voice firm and determined. Now we make sure she can never do this to any child ever again. But as they planned their next steps, none of them knew that Valerie had lied about running away. In fact, she was only a few miles away, planning her final, most desperate move to get what she wanted, and this time, she wasn't alone. The afternoon silence was broken by the sound of engines, approaching on the dirt road. Martha, who was in the kitchen preparing lunch with Isabella and Sophia, ran to the window and turned pale. There are 3 cars, she said in a low voice to Megan, and they don't look like police. Edward, who was on the phone with his lawyers organizing the legal case against Valerie, hung up immediately. Sergeant Miller pulled out his radio and called for backup, but he knew it would take at least 20 minutes for them to arrive. "Get the children to the back room," Edward ordered, but Megan was already moving Isabella and Sophia away from the windows. "Auntie Meg, what's happening?" Sophia asked, sensing the tension in the air. "We're going to play hide-and-seek again, sweetie, but this time it's very important that you stay very, very quiet." Celeste peeked through a crack in the curtains. "It's Valerie, and she brought Robert and 2 other men I don't recognize." Edward felt a rage he had never experienced before burn in his chest. "How dare she come back here?" "Because she has nothing left to lose," Megan replied. "Desperate people do dangerous things." Valerie got out of the car with her usual, confident posture, but something in her eyes had changed. There was a hardness, a coldness she no longer bothered to hide. She was dressed in dark clothes and carried a large bag. "Edward!" she yelled toward the inn. "I know you're in there. I need to talk to you." Edward started for the door, but Sergeant Miller stopped him. "Mr. Thompson, let me handle this." "No," Edward said firmly. "She's my responsibility. It was my blindness that put my daughters in danger." Edward stepped out onto the porch, keeping a safe distance. "What do you want, Valerie, or should I? Call you by your real name?" Valerie smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. "I want what's mine by right, Edward. 2 years of my life taking care of your spoiled daughters. 2 years pretending to be a devoted wife. You received far more than you deserved. A life of luxury, a family that accepted you." "A family?" Valerie laughed bitterly. "You mean 2 bratty kids and a husband who worked so much he barely noticed if I was alive or not?" Robert moved to stand beside her, his eyes scanning the property as if assessing potential escape. "Trouts." "Edward," Valerie continued, "I'll be clear. I want $5 million transferred to an account I'm about to give you. In return, I'll disappear forever, and you'll never hear from me again." "And if I say no?" The 2 men Valerie had brought with her positioned themselves strategically around the inn. Sergeant Miller whispered something into his radio, trying to speed up the arrival of backup. "If you say no," Valerie replied calmly, "my friends here will make sure your daughters come with me anyway, and this time there won't be any heroic little nanny to save them." Inside the inn, Megan held Isabella and Sophia close in the back room. The girls were scared, but they trusted Megan completely to keep them safe. "Auntie Meg," Isabella whispered, "is Mommy Valerie mad?" "She is. But remember how Auntie Meg always promised to protect you. I'm going to keep protecting you." Celeste joined them in the room. "Megan, there's a back exit that leads to the woods. If things get worse, I'm not leaving Edward and the sergeant alone. Megan, you saved these children once. You might need to save them again." Outside, the negotiations remained tense. $5 million is a lot of money, Valerie," Edward said, trying to buy time. "It's less than I would have gotten for selling your daughters, but I'm being generous because I still have feelings for you." "Did you have feelings for Richard Martinez too?" The mention of the name made Valerie's face contort with rage. Richard was weak. When he lost his daughter, he fell apart completely. "You at least have the personality to get over it." "Get over losing my daughters?" "If necessary," Valerie answered coldly. "But I'd prefer the money." Edward realized he was dealing with someone completely devoid of scruples. The woman he thought he knew had never really existed. "I need to make some calls to get that kind of money," Edward lied, trying to buy more time. "You have 1 hour," Valerie said, checking her watch. "And Edward, don't try anything heroic. My friends here aren't as patient as I am." Robert approached Edward. "Your son is being monitored at his school. If you try anything, we know exactly where to find him." Edward felt his world collapse. "What son?" "My daughters are here." Robert smiled cruelly. "Oh, you didn't know? Congratulations, Dad. Valerie was pregnant when she decided to speed up her plans." Edward looked at Valerie in total shock. "You're pregnant." "Was," Valerie corrected. "But I realized a child would be an obstacle to my plans, so I solved the problem in the most practical way." Valerie's words hit Edward like a lightning bolt. She had gotten rid of her own child for convenience, as if it were just another obstacle in her path. "You're a monster," he whispered. "I'm a survivor," Valerie retorted, "and survivors do what's necessary." Just then, the sound of sirens began to echo in the distance. Backup was arriving. Robert alerted. Valerie, who checked her watch again. Looks like our time ran out faster than I expected, she said. Robert, go get the girls. No, Edward yelled, but one of the men stopped him from moving. Robert headed for the inn, but Sergeant Miller blocked his path. Stop right there. Sergeant, I suggest you get out of the way. We don't want to hurt a police officer, but we will if we have to. Megan, who had been listening to everything from the back room, made a desperate decision. She handed Isabella and Sophia to Celeste. Take the girls through the exit to the woods now. What about you? I'll give you cover to escape. Megan opened the back room window and helped Celeste get out with the twins. Then she ran to the front room of the inn. Robert, she yelled, if you want the girls, you'll have to get through me first. Robert turned to her with a predatory smile. The hero of the story. How convenient. Where are the children? Valerie asked, realizing the plan had changed. Far away from here, Megan answered, and that's where they're staying. Valerie looked at the approaching police cars, then at Robert. Change of plans. If we can't take the girls, we'll take the nanny. Edward will pay the ransom for her too. Robert advanced toward Megan, but she was ready. Years of caring for active children had sharpened her reflexes. She ran toward the kitchen, grabbed a heavy skillet, and swung it at Robert's head, sending him staggering backward. Edward! Megan yelled. The girls are safe, but Valerie can't get away. Edward took advantage of his captor's distraction and broke free, running toward the inn. Valerie, realizing the situation had spun completely out of control, did something no one expected. She pulled out a gun. Nobody move, she screamed, pointing the pistol alternately at Edward and Megan. I am not leaving here empty-handed. Sergeant Miller tried to approach slowly. Ma'am, put the weapon down. There's no need for anyone to get hurt. Yes, there is, Valerie shrieked, tears of rage streaming down her face. For 20 years I've been humiliated, rejected, treated like trash. I finally found a way to have everything I ever deserved, and you're going to ruin it. Megan realized Valerie was completely unhinged. The mask of control and sophistication had fallen away completely, revealing a desperate and dangerous woman. Valerie, Edward said calmly, it doesn't have to be this way. We can still— No, Valerie screamed. We can't do anything. You've destroyed everything. It was at that moment that Isabella and Sophia appeared at the back door, having slipped away from Celeste in the woods and returned to find Megan. Seeing the woman they knew as their stepmother pointing a gun at the people they loved, the two girls screamed in terror. Valerie spun toward the sound of the scream, her gun now aimed directly at the two children she had tried to sell. Time seemed to stand still as Valerie pointed the gun at Isabella and Sophia. The two girls clung to each other, their eyes wide with terror, unable to comprehend why the woman they knew as their stepmother was doing this. No, Megan screamed, throwing herself between Valerie and the children. They're innocent. Innocent? Valerie laughed bitterly, her hands shaking as she held the gun. They've ruined my life since day one. Two spoiled brats who never respected me, who always preferred you to me. Edward tried to approach slowly. Valerie, please, put the gun down. We can solve this another way. There is no other way, Valerie shrieked, tears streaming down her face. You forced me to do this. I just wanted what was mine by right. It was at this crucial moment that Isabella, with the innocence of her 4 years, did something no one expected. She let go of Sophia and walked slowly toward Valerie. Mommy Valerie, the little girl said in her sweet voice, why are you crying? Isabella's simple, genuine question hit Valerie like a lightning bolt. For a moment, her mask of coldness faltered, and something like remorse flickered in her eyes. I'm not your mommy. Valerie whispered, her voice breaking. I never was. I know, Isabella replied calmly, but you lived in our house. That doesn't mean you had to be mean to us. Sergeant Miller seized the moment of distraction to position himself strategically. The police cars had finally arrived, and he could hear his colleagues approaching the property. Megan kept Sophia protected behind her, but her eyes were fixed on Isabella, who continued to approach Valerie with a courage that stunned everyone. Mommy Valerie, Isabella continued, Auntie Meg said you wanted to take us away from Daddy. Is that true? Valerie looked at that innocent face and something inside her broke completely. I thought it would be better for everyone. Better how? Because I never knew how to be a mother, Valerie confessed, her voice catching in sobs. My own mother abandoned me when I was little. I didn't know how to love you. Edward's heart broke as he realized that behind all the evil and manipulation, there was also a wounded child who had never learned what genuine love was. But Auntie Meg taught us that when you don't know how to do something, you ask for help, Isabella said with the simple wisdom of a child. You could have asked for help to learn how to be a mommy. Isabella's words made Valerie slowly lower the gun. Robert, who had recovered from the blow to his head, tried to lunge for the pistol, but was intercepted by officers who had silently surrounded the property. It's over, Valerie, Sergeant Miller said gently. Put the gun on the ground. Valerie looked around and saw she was surrounded. Robert and his accomplices were being arrested. There was nowhere left to run. I've destroyed everything, she muttered to herself, like I always do. Edward approached, slowly. Valerie, you can still do the right thing. Tell the truth about Leah. Help that family find their daughter. Valerie looked at him in surprise. Even after everything I've done, you still want to help me. I want to help Leah, Edward corrected. She deserves to come home. For a long moment, Valerie was silent. Then, slowly, she placed the gun on the ground and raised her hands. Leah is in Geneva, she said in a low voice, with a family named Hoffman. They call her Anna now. Celeste, who had returned upon hearing the commotion, ran to hug Isabella and Sophia. Oh my goodness, are you two okay? We are, said Sophia, ever the practical one, but I think Mommy Valerie needs a doctor for her heart. As Valerie was led away by the police, she paused for a moment beside Megan. You were the mother they deserved, she said quietly. The mother I could never be. Megan felt tears in her eyes, not of anger, but of a deep sadness for a woman who had chosen the wrong path so many times. It's not too late for you to try to be a better person, Megan replied. Valerie nodded slightly before being placed in the police car. 2 weeks later, Megan was sitting on the porch of the Thompson mansion, watching Isabella and Sophia play in the garden. The house had been completely redecorated. Valerie's cold, impersonal decor had been replaced by a warmer, more welcoming atmosphere. Edward joined her on the porch, carrying 2 cups of coffee. How are you feeling? He asked, handing her a cup. It's still strange, Megan admitted. Going from a kidnapping suspect to this. Edward had offered Megan a completely new position in the family, no longer as a nanny, but as the girl's official guardian and household manager. It came with a substantial salary and a stake in his company, plus an educational fund that would secure her future. You saved my daughters, Megan. You risked everything for them. There's no way to properly repay you for that. Seeing them safe and happy is repayment enough. Isabella ran toward them, her blonde hair shining in the afternoon sun. Auntie Meg, Daddy, look what Sophia and I made. She held up a drawing they had done together. 2 little girls holding hands with a dark-haired woman in a garden full of colorful flowers. That's the 3 of us, Isabella explained. Our family. Sophia joined them, holding another drawing. And this is our new baby brother, she said, showing a picture of a smiling baby. Edward and Megan looked at each other, confused. What baby brother? Edward asked. The one Auntie Meg is going to have when she marries you, Sophia replied with the absolute naturalness of a child. Megan blushed intensely, while Edward choked on his coffee. Sophia, who told you that? Megan asked, trying to maintain her composure. Nobody told us, but we saw how you look at each other, Isabella explained seriously. It's just like in the movies we watch. Edward laughed, a sound that had become much more frequent in recent weeks. Well, girls, those are things that grown-ups decide in their own time. But you're going to decide soon, right? Sophia insisted, because Auntie Meg is basically our mum already. Megan felt her heart fill with a happiness she had never imagined possible. These 2 girls, whom she had protected out of maternal instinct, now truly saw her as part of their family. That night, after Isabella and Sophia were asleep, Edward and Megan walked through the garden. They're right. You know, Edward said suddenly. About what? About you basically being their mother already, and about us. Megan stopped walking. Edward, I know it's too soon to talk about this, and I know our situation is complicated, but I can't deny they're right about the way we look at each other. Megan felt her heart speed up. And what exactly are you saying? Edward took her hands. I'm saying I'd like the chance to get to know you better, not as an employee, not as my daughter's savior, but as Megan, the brave, kind woman who risked everything for love. Megan smiled, feeling tears of joy in her eyes. I would like that very much too. 6 months later, newspaper headlines announced the wedding of developer Edward Thompson to Megan Hayes, the young hero who had saved his daughters from an international child trafficking ring. Valerie had been sentenced to 15 years in prison and was cooperating with authorities to dismantle the entire criminal network. Little Leah was reunited with her father, Richard Martinez, who had recovered from his depression and was now working with Edward on a foundation to combat child trafficking. At the wedding reception, held in the mansion's garden, Isabella and Sophia ran through the crowd in their flower girl dresses, scattering petals and smiles to all the guests. Now we're a real family, Isabella whispered in Megan's ear as they danced. We always were, Megan replied, hugging the two girls who had changed her life forever. Edward watched his new family, his courageous wife and his happy daughters, and knew that sometimes the most precious things in life arise from the darkest moments. The nightmare was over, and in its place something much stronger had been born, a genuine love, built on courage, sacrifice, and the unwavering determination of a young woman who had proven that true love sometimes comes from the most unexpected people. The story of Megan and the twins became an example that, even in the most desperate situations, one person's courage can change the destiny of many others. And that family is not defined by blood alone, but by love, protection, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for those we hold dear. In the end, love had conquered evil, and a new family had been born from the ashes of an averted tragedy.